Good afternoon, and welcome to Georgetown County Council's regular meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 14th. In the absence of our chairman, I will be conducting the meeting tonight. We'll begin with invocation. Mr. Carolina.
Good evening. Dear Heavenly Father, we come together this day again, asking for guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Continue to allow us to grow closer as a group and team in nurturing the bonds of our communities. Guide us with your grace as we make decisions that will affect the citizens, businesses, environment, and the future of Georgetown County. Put within us a revitalized energy of progress as we move forward in 2023. Continue to remind us that all that we do as stewards over the land is for the greater glory of you in the service of humanity and progress in Georgetown County. Continued peace and blessings to all in our county, state, and country. In your holy name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Carolina and a second from Ms. Mercado. Those in favor, please raise your hand. At this time, we'll have a special presentation, Hugs for Horses. Ms. Cross.
Good evening, Madam Chair, council members. I'm here tonight. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgetown County Board of Disabilities and Special Needs. We are a 24/7 operation in this county. We have 100 employees. We also operate residential services. We operate day services, employment services. But one of the things that we love doing is Hugs for Horses. And we are a fiscal sponsor for that program, which is totally donor-driven. No state, no county, just donor money comes to us. We have support from the county Parks and Recreation staff. We're grateful for that because they're awesome in making us have our horse show every year. First video we want Randy to show, going to give you a little taste of what we do.
Hee-haw! Hee-haw!
Louder!
Hee-haw!
Our program is for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds who have been identified or meet criteria stating that they have a disability. Some of our kids, we're trying to get them to talk. Some of our kids, we're trying to get them to respond. Some of our kids, just trying to get them to smile and enjoy that experience, you know. The differences from the first session to now is incredible. A lot of our kids have speech issues, and that really inhibits a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old from interacting with their peers. This is just a unique setting that you can work on skills. There's something about that little side-to-side motion and the forward and back rocking of sitting on a horse that seems to really calm them down, especially our kids who are on the autism spectrum. And we see that when we've worked on that here on the horse, then we go back to the classroom. So that transference of skills has been amazing. We have seen a change in every one of our children who's come here, whether they've been on the spectrum, whether they've had Down syndrome or any of those other disabilities. Children with disabilities are capable of a whole lot more than most of the time is expected of them. With some patience and some high expectations, our kids can do anything that any other kid can do. Man, to anybody skeptical of equine therapy or riding horses, I'd say give it a try.
Mr. Baldwin, his class is in Andrews, and he has 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. It's amazing to watch that. Would love to have you come and help sidewalk with a student one day if anyone needs some exercise. I'm going to introduce the rest of the staff. Anne-Marie is the grant writer and the brains behind the volunteer coordination. She's going to come up and introduce the other two and a new video.
members of the council. Thank you for having us today with Hugs for Horses as your spotlight. I also have over here Ronna Jacobs. Ronna can stand. She is the head of Hugs for Horses. She is the owner of the Georgetown Equestrian Center that hosts Hugs for Horses. And she is the instructor and director of the program. And then next to her is Stephanie Moore, who is Rana's protege. She is the assistant director for Hugs and also a Hugs instructor. So again, thank you for this opportunity. There's a saying that by Winston Churchill that said, there is something about the outside of a horse that is good for the inside of man. And this is the reason for Hugs for Horses therapeutic riding. Hugs uses the power of horses to heal children and adults with disabilities in our community. Our horses help eliminate the roadblocks that keep a person from being the best, most productive person they have it in them to be it a physical, emotional, social, or intellectual disability. Our riders have disabilities, as you saw from the video, anywhere from autism to cerebral palsy to ADHD, OCD. We're getting a lot of kids with anxiety, especially after COVID, depression, behavior issues, cognitive impairment. We even have a rider with schizophrenia, and we have 2 riders who are blind. So, you know, horses are amazing creatures that can do a lot of therapy in their own way. Physically, a horse provides motion that is unique. It's a back and forth, side to side motion at a walk. So when you're sitting on a horse, you're using the same muscles that you would use if you're walking. So any person with a physical disability, be it high muscle tone or low muscle tone, or, you know, that motion will encourage the strengthening of those muscles. And it also encourages a person to be balanced on a horse, to be balanced in life, which transfers to life. And it encourages strengthening of their core muscles, their stomach muscles, which, you know, are important to movement everywhere. Emotionally, bonding with the horse is very amazing because horses don't judge people. So, you know, a lot of times you can have a child, say with autism or something, that will talk to their horse, but they won't talk to people. We have riders like that right now. And it's quite a self-esteem boost to ride a horse also. You're doing something that not many people do or are able to do. So, and you're riding high when people are looking up to you rather than looking down, you know, down on you. And so it's quite a self-esteem boost. You're actually controlling a 2,000-pound animal, and that is very amazing for someone in their opinions of themselves. And socially, Hugs provides, it's like a club atmosphere of elite people who have the opportunity to sit atop a horse and control this large animal. And our riders don't know that they're even having therapy. They just know they're having the best time of their lives, and we really like it that way. In an area here in Georgetown County where there are few recreational activities available for people with disabilities, this is one, Hugs for Horses is one that they can count on every single week. During the pandemic, we remained open all but just a few weeks. We found a way to have therapy. And the reason we did this is because our riders their parents were calling us and begging Rana to please let their child ride. And so, and for many children, this was the only therapy their children had during this period of time. Even the school district had us return to operation with the school children early on, realizing the therapeutic benefit of their students. Rana started Hugs in 1988. That is 35 years ago. So we are absolutely no fly-by-night organization. And we have continued on since then. We started with 4 riders in 1988, and now we're up to maybe 55 to 60 riders every week and serve over a course of a year, probably almost 100 riders. So we have a big impact in our area, and we have changed the lives of many, many people in our community. We see these tiny miracles daily in the riders that come to us. We have children who don't talk, who started talking, started saying their first words to the horse. We have a child with autism who never initiated social contact until one day she was riding the horse and she waved to the bystanders, and that was a moment of celebration for us. My own child, who's now grown, has cerebral palsy, and in riding a horse, it was the only time he was ever balanced in life and sat up straight. So I wish he would continue to ride today, but he won't. And then let me tell you about Megan. Megan is a person who came to us, to Hugs, as a 10-year-old, and she had been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which of course is a high-functioning form of autism. And she suffered from depression and OCD, and she was on a host of medications. Anyway, she all she wanted to do was ride horses. So she started riding with Hugs, and today now she's an older teenager. And when she came, she was very socially awkward and withdrawn, and today she's a joke teller and a greeter. You know, when you come, she tells you hello, and she has come so far that Rana hired her, and she instructs children to ride now, and she can even take a joke. So, you know, it's just an amazing transformation, and probably the most amazing transformation we've seen, because we've known Megan for so long. And someone has asked, what does Hugs need the most to continue to succeed and to change lives? Well, one thing we always need is lots of volunteers, because in a given week, you know, we have some groups that come. We also have individual riders, but we have groups that come, and each child or adult takes up to 3 people. That would be a person to lead the horse and a person on either side for their safety. So that's 3 people per. And so it translates to about, I don't even know, 34 volunteers weekly that we need, and that's continuing. It's not just a one-time thing, that's continuing. Now, we have some volunteers that come for more than one session because they love it so much, but we constantly are in need of new volunteers. So I see a room full right here. And of course, the other thing that Hugs absolutely needs to stay in operation is funding. There's a joke. How do you become a millionaire by owning a horse? And the answer is you have to start out as a billionaire. Horses do cost a lot, but we run Hugs as most cost efficiently as we can. Basically, because of our partnerships with the Board of Disabilities, who is our fiscal agent, they handle our money, our incoming and outgoing money. And then we have partnerships with the Georgetown Recreation Department, who helps us when we have our annual horse show for our riders, and also provides any event that we have. They provide volunteers and tents and things like that. And of course, we also have the school district, who brings classes of kids to us every week, and they provide the transportation and the people to look out after the children while they're not on horses. So because of those partnerships, and because we have so many volunteers, or so volunteer driven, we have very little administrative costs, and all of the money we bring in goes directly to putting children on a horse. Rana has the equestrian center, the horses are hers, and all of the money we have, she charges by the hour, by the rider hour for the horse and everything else. So we can do it for about $40, $45 per session, per lesson in average, which is a whole lot less than other organizations who have to pay for the 24/7 upkeep of horses and staff. And it's a whole lot cheaper than going to a psychiatrist or a physical therapist or wherever else. Not saying that you don't need both, but horses are wonderful. Megan, as I told you earlier, her mother once said that coming to Hugs for Horses and being around a horse was absolutely better than any therapist and all medications that Megan could have ever had. So we tend to agree with that. And then I just want to finish by inviting you all, as Elizabeth did, to come out and see some of our group sessions in action and participate if you would like to help. We can certainly show you what to do. So just give us a call or text us or whatever, and we will be happy to give you information on when we need you out there. Also, we have one more little video to show you, and you may know Billy Mitchell and Rogers, seeing as how Billy runs with some of these groups of people, and see what they have to say about Hugs for Horses. Thank you.
Growing up, I really didn't care about anything but to ride horses. I ride Sally and I ride Talitha.
Well, we got another horse show coming up in May, and he's already made plans for Sally and him to be in that competition. Roger takes this thing real seriously. He probably works on it 6 months up prior to the event. He's out there making his horse hit the mark and stop when it's appropriate time. You know, it's his big deal. I am proud because I know where he was when we started, and I know where we're at today. He's had 39 operations. He's had a steel rod placed in his back. One of the driving forces for him was always, Daddy, how soon can I get back to riding?
I won first places, second places. I love competing in those horse shows.
Watching him compete, it is like the father who's sitting watching his son throw the winning pass or the hitting that home run. When he got his first blue ribbon, I don't know who shouted higher, him or me. He's real proud of what he's done, and he should be. Every child, when they come to this horse show, is a winner.
I hope everybody else does good here too, because you know there's some kids out here, they're really talented.
He's a good kid, and I'm real fortunate that he's my son, and I don't know what else to say.
Half of horses, that the service that you render to the community, and I'm sure that the parents are very happy that you are part of their lives, because it takes all of us to help make Georgetown a better place to live. So thank you so much for what you do. Public comments. A public comment period is included on each meeting agenda and shall be limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. No speaker may yield his or her allotted time to another speaker. Members of the public who wish to address council during the public input period should sign up with the clerk of council, who's not here tonight, before the meeting is called to order. We have 16 persons who have signed up, and we will ask you kindly to observe a 2-minute limitation on your presentation. At this time, we will hear from whoever is presenting the names.
Me. Madam Vice Chairperson, our first speaker is Jennifer Hunt.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Hunt, and I live in Andrews. I try to speak every month, and I end up having a planned little speech, and I get nervous and don't say everything that I would like to say. But what I would like to say tonight is please bring the EMS back to Andrews. There is over 2,500 residents in Andrews. Now, the closest EMS is in Big Dam, which is at least 8 minutes away. Mr. Brandon Ellis stated that it changed the responsiveness to calls about 2 minutes. I don't think so. I don't think so. And he also stated there was problems with the building. That cost $300,000 to fix. How much is a life worth to you? Is your grandson, who might be visiting Hugs for Horses, are they not worth $300,000? 2 of the 7 county councilmen live in Andrews. That's almost a third. And we don't have an ambulance. We don't have EMS. The next one after Big Dam is 9 Mile Curve, which is farther than that. Please consider bringing back EMS. And I know the Hugs for Horses people just left, but I will be volunteering for them. I will be contacting them. But there's over 50 churches, 4 schools. Please consider bringing back EMS to Andrews.
Joey McHugh.
Good afternoon, I'm Joey McHugh. I'm one of the residents in Inlet Point South, the original Inlet Point South, which consists of 26 homes, 13 of which are on the ocean front, 13 of which are on the marsh. If you're here in opposition to the peninsula's petition and travel behavior, please stand up to the council member aware of who's here. Now, thank you. People have come from Chicago, from Michigan, from Columbia, from North Carolina, from Virginia to be here because this is an important issue to us. And I'm sorry to have to tell y'all, but y'all been put in a really bad position. And you've been put in a bad position by your planning commission. This matter came before the planning commission, initially scheduled for January, and the petitioners withdrew that petition after they were informed that the notice was improper and there was a defect in the application itself. It said that Inlet Point South was the petitioner when in fact it was the peninsula. At that time, I had communications with the Planning Commission staff advising them that I'm a deeded owner of a fee simple interest in a house at Inlet Point South. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, the property line, distance between my property line and the Madam Vice Chairman is about how far this water treatment plant is from the corner of our lot. Yet the Planning Commission failed to give proper notice of the Planning Commission hearing in January. The petitioner withdrew the hearing for that, or the matter from that hearing. And yet, when it came before the commission in February, they also failed to provide proper notice, despite having heard from me and others who failed to get notice of the hearing. Now, they also, when I When I did to them that day, I told them of the defect in the notice. They proceeded with the hearing. Now, they put y'all in a political box because no politician I know of wants to have their name associated in the paper negatively. They want y'all to proceed on a matter that wasn't properly heard at the planning commission. That puts y'all in a bad spot. There have been 2 articles so far in the Post and Courier about this very issue. And I
Mr.
feel certain, I've not talked to them.
Your time has ended.
But I feel certain there'll be multiple articles about it, particularly if council chooses to ignore the rights of the landowners most affected.
Eliza Lennon?
Good afternoon. Eliza Lennon, born and raised in Georgetown County, and worked at the hospital for 20 years as a registered nurse. Retired now, but I'm so concerned when I'm hearing stuff that 2 dead people was found on Choppy where I was born and raised. It's like, that's scary. Things that used to happen away from us, it's happening right here. And that's really scary. We have young children that we're raising, our grands or great-grands. We just need to have more law enforcement, please, in our rural area. I mean, if they're just driving around on unmarked car, it would probably help some of the crime. My other concern is I live right off of Dunbar Road. It's a very narrow highway. I don't know if you've ever traveled it. I'm always afraid. I had a nephew came from New York, and he was here probably about 4 months, riding his bike to the store on Dunbar Road, and a car hit him, and he was killed. Please, we need the road to be done over. Large trucks come through our community and driving really fast. I mean, Potwood, lots of 18-wheelers. I realize it's a county road, but sometimes you gotta limit the weight because our road's forever torn up. They fix it 1 week, the next week it's already torn up. Please, do something about that. The other thing I wanna mention is a bike trail, a walk trail would be very good down that road. It would just at least give us another exercise point. I realize we do have some parks in the area, but just to walk straight down that road would be great. So thank you, and I appreciate whatever you can do to help us keep the crime down in our community. God bless you.
Don Dubose?
Thank you for letting me talk. I'll be brief. I have a place at Inlet Point. 30 years ago, I talked to Joe Payne, who's the captain of the Clemson Cotton Bowl team, and I asked Joe when we were looking at the lots. I had all the lots on the marsh. Only maybe one was taken, so I was trying to figure out which one I'd like. So I chose the one I did, and I asked Joe. I said, Joe, there ever going to be any houses built in front of this in my lot? And he didn't answer me then. He went back, and I think the next day he told me the CEO, I think who was probably retired now, he said, no, there'll never be any houses built on those lots. So that satisfied me. Probably if I'd known that, I would have not chosen the one I did. Anyway, that was my regret that this might happen. Thank y'all.
Russ Hunt?
I don't know whether you know it or not, but there are 2 teams from the state of South Carolina that are going to be playing in the NCAA tournament this week. Furman and College Charleston. I went to Furman, and this is purple, and we're playing Virginia, and I hope it's a good game. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Lady Gamecocks, who Mr. Tanner right here orchestrated, so I'd like to reclaim my 30 seconds. I've been living in this area on Inlet Point Drive for about 20 years. What concerns me is that the peninsula paid $5 for this land. It's 0.87 acres. They put a water treatment plant. And Nothing wrong with that. My concern is what happens when the sand disappears. They use that money, they're short in money to pay for nourishment. What happens if the renourishment happens again? Are they going to change the covenants and the parking lot in front of my home? Are they going to change that to 2 lots or 1 lot and build another home? I just don't think that we should allow the covenants to be changed. The covenants are meant to protect the owners and not bail out bad financial decisions by the peninsula. I'm going to give up my time to someone else.
Eric Obal.
Thank you, members of the council. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm Eric Obal. Live at 234 Inlet Point South. Drive right across from the water treatment plant, right dead center. That's where my wife and I bought a house back in 2020. I would like to ask that you oppose this amendment to the Inlet Point plan development. One of the reasons why I will touch base on this evening is in the IPS covenants and restrictions under Article 9, Section 2B. It states, ensuring that the location and configuration of structures are visually harmonious with the terrain and vegetation of the lots and dwelling units, and with dwelling units and surrounding lots, dwelling units and structures, and does not unnecessarily block scenic views from existing structures or tend to dominate any general development or natural landscape. If the proposed homes or this proposal goes through, were built on these 2 sites, they would most certainly block our scenic views to the ocean and to the marsh, plus dominate the middle of our neighborhood with 2 50-foot tall houses that would look completely out of place with the current structures and landscape. I ask that you oppose this amendment to Inlet Point plan development. Thank you.
Ryan McHugh.
I'm Ryan McHugh, council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm in opposition of turning the water treatment facility into 2 lots. As others have pointed out, I think that it goes against the covenants and restrictions put in place to protect the neighborhood and the feel that it's had up until this point. I also call into question the legitimacy of this hearing because I don't think proper procedure was followed in getting us to this point. And I do think that's something we'll have to look into further. I also do intend to be here on the 28th if we do get to that point. Thank you.
I'm going to mispronounce this and I apologize. Randy Bohouse.
Sorry, I'm not a good printer. It's Randy Beers from the Twin Cities. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for hearing my concern. We've been vacationing down in this area for 45 years. My family has a reunion every year. I've been a property owner here for 35 years. We just finished a home on Lot 2 of Inlet Point South. I spent my first night there last night, and we're thrilled to be able to vacation and be in this gorgeous part of the country. When I built the home, we built decks that looked at the ocean, because I'm on the ocean front, but just as important for us was the marsh and the creek, so we built 2 decks looking at the marsh and the creek. The treatment plant is fairly well hidden, although it was a real surprise when they put that in 20-some years ago. I was not happy about that, but they've done a nice job putting trees and a pond. And we sit there and look at the ducks and have enjoyed that. And selfishly, I'm just sorry that people are thinking about putting a couple homes in there to change the atmosphere of the whole place. I think there's plenty of homes there. We don't need any more. So I'm just grateful that I get to speak and came down from Minnesota to speak in front of you today. Thank you.
Ray Tanner.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I too reside on Inlet Point South. My wife and I bought a home there 8 years ago. Prior to that, we had vacationed in that home many, many times and decided to purchase the property with the water treatment facility plants directly across the street. Maybe Eric has them directly in front, but they're also in front of my house as well. We accepted that and we bought that house knowing that they were there. I understood from the planned development that they would be there. We understood that, accepted that. And now there's news that we could have homes in that location. Certainly, we're opposed to that. Those water treatment facility plants are probably 12, 15 feet high, and it's been documented that they're treed and lined and cosmetically have been taken care of very well. And to think that two 52-foot homes vertically would go into that property just seems way out of line. So obviously, many of us here today are opposed to any homes going into that space and not sure that the legal ramifications are accepted either. Thank you.
Wade Mullins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. My name is Wade Mullins. I am an attorney, and I will tell you that I do believe, like Mr. McHugh, that there are some significant legal defects and issues with this effort to amend the ordinance. But I'm here as a property owner. My family owns a lot on the beach, and I want to make sure you guys should have received a letter from Mr. Peel here is going to speak in a second, and giving you some of the legal reasoning. But from a practical standpoint, and there's a map, and this is within the package too. Hopefully you guys have this. And I want to make sure you understand, because there may be some confusion about what is before you. On this map, you see the two circles, and I'm sorry I can't blow it up, but we'll show you, you have them, and if you'll look at them, the amendment is that small circle right there. Who's filing for this amendment? The peninsula. These 33 lots down here, okay? They are filing to change this plan development that was approved as an ordinance to add 2 homes, and you've heard all the reasons why they should not. All of these homes within this small circle that is going to be affected are against this. The entity that is applying is down here. They're over here. They're the only ones that are going to benefit. Everybody else is going to be negatively impacted. There is a very practical, equitable reason why you should deny this. And you should deny it as soon as you can. There are a lot of legal ramifications as well. Plan development, if you look at your own ordinance, the property owners should all be a part of the application, and that makes sense. Somebody like Mr. Tanner buys a home based on a plan development, they ought to be able to rely on that. If there's going to be a change, they ought to all be a part of that effort to change it. And your ordinance allows a major change to occur, but it has to be all of the property owners included. That did not occur in this case. So I ask you to carefully consider this matter, review the information that is in front of you, talk to some of these people that are out here, make sure you understand what is before you, and make the right decision to deny this effort. Thank you.
Wesley Peel.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Council. I represent some of the homeowners that are here tonight, some that aren't. Thank you for giving us an opportunity. I also want to thank your staff for helping gather some documents for me, Planning Commission. They're very helpful. I was trying to get up to speed in short order. And so I'm going to be brief, or quick, rather. We don't know, one of the things I should say is, I don't think you know what's being amended, because in that packet, the approved and amended plan developments aren't included there, and the county's not been able to provide me what the plan developments are as approved, either one of them. So they're not in there. They're not available to review what was originally approved. This goes against, if you would approve these 2 new homes in there, this would go against your own land use plan, which says, walk my neck, we are putting no more houses in there. We don't want them, no more residences. We got to cut off on that. And also your survey you commissioned last year in 2021, your constituents clearly did not want any more development, residential development in Walk my Neck, especially the South Neck. If you go back and look at the results, they're overwhelmingly against any more homes being put in there. And well, this isn't the only choice. This water plant's been decommissioned, It doesn't have to be houses. It could be open space. It could be new green space, which is what I think everybody envisioned it probably was supposed to be. If you look back at the original plan developments, it's not an either-or choice. There are plenty of ways that this land could be used to benefit the property owners. And again, this amendment of PUDs, I'm in a PUD. I don't think my neighbors would be happy if I went down to council and said I want to amend it on my own. I think all the folks have to be involved in that. And here we have an entity that's not even going to be affected. All they're going to do is get cash out of this. So I appreciate your time, and I hope you listen to these folks. Thank you. And I should mention, I'm pleased to be here with my friend in class, law school class, Dan Stacy. It took us this many years to be against each other on something. So, thank you.
Dan Stacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick point of clarification. The withdrawal that happened in January was because staff inadvertently sent out an erroneous notice. The applicant did not withdraw. That was an erroneous notice at staff level, which I'm not upset about. Everybody works hard and makes mistakes, so that was the purpose for that. So just for quick clarification, because I know we're on a short time frame here tonight. This is a sewer plant as well as a water plant. It treated active sewer and shipped that way up Highway 17 and sprayed that effluent on the reserve driving range. And after many, many years, we got some waivers from the EPA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife to allow the Water and Sewer District to take over the treatment of this sewer and water out of this. DHEC obviously approved the plan. You've seen that in your package, and Holly can discuss that. Simply, we applied to modify the PD to change from community service to R10, just like the other houses that are in the community. The peninsula is the applicant, so that is the entity that would apply. Inlet Point South, as a board, sent a letter of no objection to this application when we filed it, thereby, I think, fulfilling the obligation to get all the representatives that are members of the PUD. The allegation that there's no benefit here to the Inlet Point South owners is a little bit tough for me, because there used to be, a sewer plant there, and now there's not. And there'll be some single-family homes. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this. The staff report is favorable. It complies with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan. We maintain notices were sent correctly per the ordinances that we have. Mr. Peel's letter is an interesting letter, but it discusses matters for the council to consider involving political interaction among the two homeowners associations and architectural review issues that I respectfully suggest are not necessarily for the purview of county council. That is a homeowners association issue to be decided among themselves. There's been a lot of discussion about view. I think your county attorney can confirm that unless there's something very weird like a view easement, there is no implied right to a view in South Carolina. There is really no such thing. As far as the photographs in your package presented to the Planning Commission that will show you the wonderful aesthetic of the former sewer plant. Thank you.
Reverend Alfred Darby.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of Georgetown County Council. There was a prime meeting at our church, and I'm the pastor, Reverend Alfred Darby, the pastor of Nazareth AME Church, Choppy Community. And the sheriff stated to us that there has not been an increase in the number of deputies in 20 years. We know it is difficult to retain good personnel, but we urge you to give additional funding so that not only we can hire more deputies, but we can retain them. We ask for your support in this matter. I know the surrounding counties, it is difficult, it's not easy. We're asking you whatever funding you can to please do that. And second, Ebenezer Church, where Ebenezer Church is located in Andrews, there is a 4-way stop sign there, and a light needs to be there on the county line between Williamsburg and Georgetown counties. Whatever you can do, please do that. I also want to say ditto to the individual that came up about emergency medical service in Andrews. That's a wide area and it needs that. Thank you very much.
Cindy Person.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Person. I'm here this evening to speak about a proposed amendment to the GR ordinance that's on Thursday's Planning Commission agenda. The packet states that council has requested that we review the requirement for site plan reviews for multifamily projects and consider removing the Planning Commission and council from the review process. While we wholeheartedly agree and support a revision to the GR ordinance to bring both the site plan review process as well as the zoning ordinance itself into compliance with state law, the proposed amendments that are on the agenda do not accomplish that goal. Site plan reviews are certainly appropriate for staff decision if the underlying zoning is in compliance with state law in the first place. In Georgetown County, we have a great deal of GR zoning that is out of sync with the comprehensive plan. The proposed amendment does not address this problem, and it could be very easily remedied by a one-sentence revision to the text of the GR ordinance. It does not require downzoning. That sentence is notably absent. Site plans that are reviewed by staff are always appealable to Planning Commission. The proposed revision does not address any of the critical components of the appeal process or how such staff decisions will be communicated to the interested parties or to the public. In terms of transparency in the planning and zoning process, I would suggest that the proposed revisions as they stand today are a giant step backwards. This request was apparently from council, according to the Planning Commission documents, and we certainly hope that council will request the Planning Department to make further revisions to address all the issues before any amendments are considered by Planning Commission or County Council. Thank you very much.
Frank McCleary.
Madam Vice Chair, the Council, I am Frank McCleary, the Mayor of Andrews. I was here 30 days ago on the 14th of February to address the concerns of the EMS, which was just talked about by Mrs. Hunt. We also have our fire chief and his lovely wife here and other members of Andrews that are here for the same reason. I'm being the spokesperson. I will address this again. Tonight, again, since that date on the 14th, we have the December, you move the ambulance. On the 3rd of March, you begin to clear the building. And on the 7th of March, you begin to demo a building in Andrews. So right now, which without checking, and unfortunately, there was a gas leak that occurred and lasted about 30 minutes. You can imagine what could have happened had that thing ignited. And in fact, I understand that the operator of that track hole was injured. So we can imagine his injury, this thing exploding, and what could happen to the folks that lived just around that building. So I was called out on Saturday, and all of the appliances, the HVAC, and everything has been moved. So the question that was asked to you all before, was this a permanent move, and what is the plan to bring this EMS back? And again, we've laid out all the critical and vulnerable citizens that we have there, and we still have not gotten a response back. I want to thank Councilman Everett Carolina for coming down and walking through and seeing what we are witnessing, and actually driving out and seeing some of the challenges with this ambulance being 5 miles away, 8 minutes is just too far. In fact, when I was coming here, the ambulance from the Georgetown area was responding to a call in Andrews at 5:15 to someone suffering from shortness of breath. Not so sure of the outcome, but I pray that that person is alive. We as leaders have to make the right decision and get this ambulance back into Andrews. That is our obligation. Thank you.
Sharon Carr.
Good afternoon, all council members. My name is Sharon Carr. I'm a property owner on Black Gum Road, where this is the second reading to have it rezoned from MR to GC. First, I would like to begin to put on record, as I did with zoning, I have no problem with an individual who owns property, maintain it, what they want to do with their property. But the property that is up for zoning, my property as well as I speak for my brother and the cousins of ours, it surrounds us, so it almost feels like spot zoning to me. I have a great concern with it being zoned general commercial because it's in the past what has already been zoned commercial in the front piece is a gas station and a little, I guess I could say retail place where a PNC bank used to be. And at one time with raising my kids there, I had someone who was lurking in the woods looking at us as we were going into the house. Even though I understand the family members wanting to zone it commercial and are not going to live there, but trying to get more bucks for their money, they're going to sell and they're going to go. You can't do anything with it now for the way it's zoned now and what comps are and what they are, that's how it needs to be sold. I also want to talk to you guys because I also work with St. Elizabeth Place, which is a HUD complex and for seniors. And I want the council to really consider when things come before them as far as affordable housing is concerned. When people hear affordable housing, for some reason I hear the word ghetto, and that is not the case. I work for a nonprofit where I actually built affordable housing, which was a house for 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, with the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Those individuals actually put down payment to fill a part of their development and are currently only paying $330 a month. We are a service industry in Georgetown County, and I feel that we're going to have the individuals who's going to provide that kind of employment to us. We need to find a place for these people to also to be able to.
That was our final speaker.
Thank you, Ms. Broach. Next item, consent agenda. A matter on the consent agenda was previously approved by virtue of the agenda approval. Public hearings. One item, ordinance number 23-03 to amend the future land use map to redesignate 1.9 acres of a parcel TMS 03-0408-009-00-00 located on Choppy Road from high-density residential to commercial. The floor is now open for public comments pertaining to ordinance number 23-03. I'm sorry, that ordinance is 22-27.
Good evening, Council. My name is Queen Esther Rogers, and this is the third time I've been before you about this property being changed from residential to commercial. And what I wanted to say was this piece of property has always been commercial since the 1920s. When my great-grandfather had 2 sons, and on this piece of property across the street where Highway 261 comes through, each son, being an entrepreneur, they opened businesses across the street from one another. And it's been that way from my great-grandfather to my grandfather to my father and now to me. In the county, when they rezoned the whole county, I think they inadvertently rezoned this to residential. And I'm here to ask for it to be back to commercial. When the county of Georgetown needed a place to build a school, which is called Deep Creek School, they purchased the land from my father. And it's the second school that's been on the Rogers land. There was a school there when my great-grandfather built the school there, way long years ago. But what I wanted to say, my 2 minutes, but I would like for this to be rezoned back to commercial the way it's always been. Thank you.
Appointment to boards. Councilor Elliott has recommended the appointment of Suzanne King to fill a seat on the Accommodation Tax Advisory Committee representing Council District 1. Is there a motion to appoint Suzanne King to that board?
Madam Councilor, I nominate we appoint Suzanne King to the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee representing County Council District 1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Those in favor of appointing Suzanne King to the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee, please raise your hand. Any opposers? Motion carries. Parks and Recreation Commission. Councilor Stella Mercado has recommended the appointment of Amy Miller to fill a seat on the Parks and Recreation Commission representing Council District 6. This is a call for the motion to appoint Amy Miller.
Yes, ma'am. I move to appoint Amy Miller to Parks and Rec Commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam Co-Chairman, or Vice Chairman. I'll get it right there. Thank you.
We have a motion from Ms. Mercado with a second from Mr. Anderson to appoint Ms. Miller to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of this appointment of Ms. Miller, please raise your hand. Any opposers? Motion carries. Resolutions, proclamations. Proclamation number 23-02, honoring children's author and Georgetown native Renee Brown. Ms. Broach, our Public Information Officer, will present.
Council members, we have a resolution honoring a local children's book author. She is a native of Georgetown, and I believe that this is going to be presented at a later date, but I would like to read the resolution if you will indulge me. Whereas children's literature is not only used to teach students how to read and write, but it can also help to increase their language, emotional, and cognitive skills. In addition, children's literature can help students learn about global values and help them become more skillful at problem solving, as well as thinking critically and creatively. And whereas Georgetown native Renee Brown has made it a life goal to promote literacy and character development through her children's book series, The Big Rig Kids, and whereas the book series inspired by Renee Brown's trucking career tackles serious social and economic issues and has contributed to the growth and strength of children and families of every race, class, and ethnic background, and whereas Renee Brown, through her books and programming, not only identifies challenges related to literacy issues, but also focuses on other traumas faced by youth and families daily in all communities. Additionally, Renee Brown has implemented workshops and community service activities in support of grandparents raising grandkids, veterans, the homeless, individuals with physical disabilities, and adoption, to name only a few. And whereas Renee Brown's work in the Carolinas as an author, educator, and speaker provides a national forum for youth and families to discuss difficult topics that have the potential for negative impacts, She continues to engage diversity and inclusion and raise awareness of the importance of mental health support by advocating for youth, families, and all individuals. Therefore, be it proclaimed by Georgetown County Council and a meeting duly assembled that Georgetown, South Carolina hereby gives honor and recognition to our hometown hero, Renee Brown. So shall it be this 14th day of March, 2023.
The chair will now recognize a motion pertaining to resolution number 23-02.
So moved.
Mr. Elliott, is there a motion, a second?
I second.
We have a motion from Mr. Elliott and a second from Mr. Newton to honor children's author and Georgetown native Renee Brown. Those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Those opposing? Motion carries, and I understand the resolution will be presented at a later date.
That is my understanding, yes.
Third reading of ordinances from our Finance Director, Ms. Langston.
Good evening, Madam Vice Chairman and County Council. Ordinance number 23-2 amends the current operating budget to appropriate unanticipated revenues and fund balances for unforeseen costs as detailed in the body of the proposed ordinance. Some of the expenditures outlined in this ordinance were previously approved by County Council as noted in the body. This ordinance has been changed since second reading with the additions of section 10 through 12 in this version that you have before you. So amendment will be needed for third reading. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question.
Mr.
Can
Anderson?
you briefly tell us what's in the amendments again, please?
What are in the amendment?
Yes, yeah, when we're going to amend this thing, what's going to be, what are those two elements you talked about?
It's actually three.
Three,
And,
okay.
They're all for Midway Fire District. One is for some repairs from an accident. We are going to appropriate the insurance proceeds that we receive so that we can go ahead and repair that ambulance. Another one is one that we left off from the first reading that has to do with the extraction of our 911 CAD system. That's also for county fire and law enforcement. And the other appropriation is $10,000 for a training donation that was given by the Robinson family. That funding actually came to us in February of '22, but the training is to take place this year. So we're going to appropriate the funds so we can go ahead and do that training that they donated money for.
Thank you, Karis.
Any other questions? At this time, we will receive a motion for ordinance number 23-02.
Madam Chairman, so moved.
Second?
A second.
We have a motion from Mr. Anderson and a second from Mr. Elliott in reference to ordinance number 2302. Now we need to amend this motion. May we have a motion to
So moved.
amend? A second for the
Second.
amendment? Oops. Ms. Carolina? Now we'll vote on the amendment. Those in favor?
Any discussion?
Sorry.
Go
Yes,
ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Is there any discussion on this ordinance number 23-02?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Okay, call for a vote on the amendment to ordinance number 23-02. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposes? Now back to the main motion. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposes? Motion carries. Ordinance number 23-03. Ms. Richardson.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you and good evening. As usual, I will do items 10B and 10C together as they do involve the same parcel. This is a request from Queen Esther Rogers to rezone 1.9 acres from GR to GC. This property is at the intersection of Highway 261 or Choppy Road and Deep Creek Drive. We have not had any changes since we reviewed this last at second reading. You'll recall the reason for this request, as Ms. Rogers stated, was to allow for the commercial use that was historically located on the property. Future land use map does designate this site as high-density residential, so a future land use map amendment is needed to facilitate the request. The Planning Commission did vote 6-0 in favor of the rezoning request. They also voted 6-0 to recommend approval for the future land use map amendment from high-density residential to commercial. And I'll be glad to answer any questions for both 10B and 10C.
Are there any questions? Mr. Newton?
Madam Vice Chair, I have one. I went back and asked some of the Planning and Zoning Committee members that was originally on the first committee when this was done. And as Ms. Rogers stated, it was just an oversight that they blanketed that whole area and did not take into account that that was a commercial business for so many years. So we would just be putting it back to its original plan.
That's correct. This was done in 2008, and at that time we were zoning a very large area of the county, and I think it was just that existing commercial building was overlooked at that time, or I believe we would have designated it as commercial then.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson.
Any other questions? Now we will recognize a motion pertaining to ordinance number 23-03.
Madam Vice Chair, I recommend that we approve ordinance number 23-03 for approval.
May I have a second?
Second.
We have a second, a motion from Mr. Newton and a second from Mr. Elliott to accept ordinance number 23-03. If there's no further discussion, we will recognize a vote for this ordinance. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposers? Motion carries. Ordinance number 23-04. I don't think there is any additional questions or discussion. We will recognize a motion for ordinance number 23-04.
Madam Vice Chair, I recommend we approve ordinance number 23-04.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Newton and a second from Mr. Elliott to adopt ordinance number 23-04. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposers? Motion carries. Now we are down to second reading of ordinances. Mrs. Richardson.
Yes, ma'am. Item 11A is a request to amend the Inlet Point South plan development to add two 10,000 square foot single-family lots on the site of the former water and sewer treatment facility. This PD is located behind a gate along the Inlet Point Drive and Norris Drive in Litchfield. The Inlet Point South PD is a single-family subdivision that was approved in the early 90s, as was stated, with 13 single-family lots on the ocean, 13 single-family lots on the marsh. There are also an additional 33 single-family lots known as the Peninsula at Inlet Point South that was approved in the late 90s, and they are located along the peninsula to the south of the single-family lots. Inlet Point South is part of a larger PD known as Inlet Point. And that PD also has 168 multifamily condos that were approved in 1980. That's not part of this request tonight. The permitted uses for the PD include single-family, multifamily, and the water sewer treatment facility that's been discussed. The tax map parcel in question is shown on our Georgetown County GIS maps as one parcel today, containing 1.963 acres. Two separate deeds for this tract were recorded in 2007, and at that time, the 0.873 acres for the tract in question were deeded to the Peninsula Inlet Point South Property Owners Association. The plat itself has not been recorded, which is why you still see one large tract when you look at GIS. And as we'll get to in a minute, we are making that a condition of approval that the property in question be separated out by plat as well as by deed. The water sewer treatment plant has not functioned since March of 2022. They did go through the DHEC decommissioning process to remove the system, and that was completed in June of 2022. That information is included in your packet. The HOA is requesting to amend this 0.873 acre parcel where the plant is located in order to add 2 single-family homes. Each lot will be approximately 10,953 square feet and will be in keeping with the existing parcels in the PD. They have also indicated that the remaining area will stay as open space. They do have plans to try and repurpose the existing water tank and use it for irrigation for the development. There are 2 letters of support from the HOAs in your packet, one from the Peninsula Inlet Point South HOA and one from the Inlet Point South HOA. And just to clarify, it's my understanding the Inlet Point South HOA covers both areas, and then there is a separate sub-HOA for the Peninsula Inlet Point South, which just covers those 33 lots. But the Peninsula members are also members of the Inlet Point South HOA. In terms of a flood zone, this property is currently located in a V14 flood zone. The proposed flood zone in the new maps show it in an AE14. So the homes will need to be elevated and constructed to meet the flood zone requirements of the AE zone. This property is shown on the future land use map as medium density. The proposal would be in keeping with the current future land use map designation. We would not need an amendment to the map to facilitate the request. In summary, the tract is designated for medium density and it complies with that. The previous use of the site is no longer needed and the lot sizes are compatible with existing lots in the development. If council does approve the request, staff recommends that you condition the request based on approvals from the necessary regulatory agencies. We also are requesting setbacks of 20 feet for the front, 15 for the side, and 15 for the rear. Those are the setbacks that are used elsewhere in the development. And the aforementioned subdivision plat be recorded to completely create that 0.873 acre lot. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this item in February. At that time, we had 3 people that spoke in opposition. We also received 7 letters of opposition, 3 letters in favor. Some of the comments discussed were the impact on ocean or marsh views, violation of the deeds and covenants, and impacts on the existing pond that's located on the site. The Planning Commission made a motion to approve the request, and that motion passed with a 4-2 vote. I also wanted to address some of the things that were mentioned earlier, the withdrawal. We did advertise this for January meeting. At that time, the notice did have a mistake in that we listed Mr. Stacy as the agent for the Inlet Point South HOA as opposed to the Peninsula HOA. So we brought the issue back in February with the corrected notice. There was also a question, I think, about the application, who could apply for the PD. The regulations in our zoning ordinance for who can apply to amend a PD are located in Article 17. There's a chart there that lists the property owners of a directly impacted area as the entity who can apply when we're looking to amend a PD. It's a little bit different if you're creating a PD from scratch versus doing a major PD amendment. The last thing, I think we did hear some comments about notice. That's addressed in Ordinance 1702.206 of the zoning ordinance. And the notice requirement specifically refers to property owners as reflected on the tax records. That's the information that we use when we send our notices out. That information is available on GIS. We pull the documents for those within 400 feet, and the notices were sent to the people that received the tax notice. That's how we do our mailing, and that was the list that the applicant provided, so that's who received the notices. And that is the information I have. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions?
I've got a question.
Ms.
Couple
McCarter.
questions. You said that this was, the future land use map is medium density,
Yes, ma'am.
and the current PD has that as the zoning.
Well, that is the future land use map designation. The current PD conceptual plan shows the water and sewer treatment facility. So that's part of the reason why we're here, is it's a change in land use that is considered a major change. So this is following the process for a major change to a plan development.
Anyone
I
else?
have a few questions.
Ms.
Madam
Anderson?
Chairman. First, just a comment. This might make a good case study, looking at this. And I'm going to go with what you said here, how who can apply for changes to a PD, and you went through a new PD, and then down there, under in the chart in section 1702.1, the property owners of direct impact of the area are eligible applicants for major changes. Now, is that applicable here, or is that part of the, I'm kind of confused on, this is a change, and is this part of the same document? Do you follow me?
That is the section in our ordinance, and it's a chart there that says who can apply for different types of requests. And the request here is for a major amendment to a PD. So if you look at that chart, it lists who all can apply, and certainly council, planning commission can apply to amend a PD, but it also lists property owners of the directly impacted area. That's who can file a request.
So that's applicable here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Couple other questions, just geographically. If I look at this, this is a PD that's a gated community, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, at the north, we've got the Inlet Point South Community Association. At the south, we've got the Peninsula Inlet Point South Association, and I think you gave a breakdown on those. Now, the way I understand it, this particular plat is in the north end, the Inlet Point South Community Association, right? Is that within that particular HOA?
The property is located, yes, within that neighborhood.
Do you know how we ended up with two different HOAs and one PD? Just out of curiosity.
No, sir, I don't. I could make some assumptions. They were developed at different times, perhaps.
The peninsula came along later, maybe it sounded like from the dates?
I think that's correct.
Okay, I'm getting a nod of yes out there. Now, the part that, getting to the devil's in the details here, and the part that bothered me is that the two deeds were done 16 years ago in 2007. And unfortunately, the plats were never recorded in subdividing these parcels. So somebody's been paying for this entire parcel, this tax map number, since then, I guess. And so I'm wondering if we don't have a housekeeping problem here where we should go ahead and get these plats straightened out, because I got into our assessor's webpage here, and the owner is Inlet Point South Community Association. It looks like they're paying $170 a year in taxes. So my recommendation to do a little housekeeping would be to defer this thing until we get this thing squared away, and we've got two different parcels, two different tax maps, and then we can go ahead with what we need to do as far as our zoning of each one of them, or whatever we want to do. But I think we ought to get the horse before the cart here. So what do you think from your perspective on that? Does that sound like a good idea?
I certainly wouldn't have any opposition to that, Mr. Anderson. I do think we've we have certainly made that a condition of approval, so certainly staff would not allow any land disturbance or permitting or issuance of any approvals for those structures until that property was subdivided. You are correct, it's my understanding that Inlet Point South has been paying the taxes on those properties.
I see. Well, from my standpoint, sitting up here, this would be another loose end that we just kind of let go, and may never know whether it ever got straightened out. It's kind of like the thing we were going through with the Mercom property, and is it forest and agriculture, or is it a PD, or I just think we ought to go down the road of doing this correctly myself.
Mr. Richardson, is this a condition of approval of the amendment?
That's our recommendation, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it would be taken care of and nothing would happen on the property until that was done?
That's correct.
Okay.
Anything else?
Ollie, I'm looking at the aerial map. Has that pond been filled in, or is it still there?
I don't believe so. It's still there.
Would it be filled in, or a portion of it, to fill those 2 R10 lots?
No, sir. I think that would be part of what they're saying they would leave as open space for the community.
Ollie, so in essence, the proposal for the 2 10,000 square foot lots, the balance of the property would be left as what, open space?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I have one more question, maybe point of clarification. Holly, in the packet, we received 2 letters from both presidents of the HOAs approving or for this change, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we are back to ordinance number 23-07. Is there a motion in reference to that ordinance?
Yes, ma'am. I motion that we approve ordinance 2306.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion with a second for ordinance number 23-07. Is there any discussion from anyone?
2306.
6.
Thank you for the correction. The ordinance is 23-06. Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Opposes? Motion carries. Ordinance number 23-07.
Yes, ma'am, and I will do items 11B and 11C, again, involve the same tracks. I'll go over those together. This is a request to rezone 4 parcels totaling approximately 6.9 acres on Black Gum Road from MR10, or 10,000 square foot residential, to GC, general commercial. These parcels are mostly vacant, wooded, and open space land. There are 3 single-family homes located on adjacent neighboring lots, and the applicant's request is to rezone this acreage to GC to allow for a future commercial use. The surrounding uses include a variety of different zoning district classifications and both residential and non-residential uses. To the north and east, we have a planned development that has multiple uses, including multifamily, commercial, restaurants, office, bank, and other commercial uses. There's GC zoning to the south, the retail store and a studio. And to the west, we have FA zoning with single-family homes, a communication tower, and a water tank. So we have a varied mix of uses in this one location. We do not feel that this particular request is considered spot zoning because we are looking at a large acreage amount and there is commercially zoned property that is adjacent to this tract. However, it does leave those remaining MR10 lots sort of in the center of the donut hole, and they would be surrounded on all sides by commercial property, so there is some concern there. The future land use map designates this property as high-density residential, and a change to the future land use map would be required to commercial in order to support the rezoning request. We did want to mention that the proposed zoning to GC does cause one of the existing lots, the Bly property, it's currently 0.24 acres. And the way it is platted and its triangular shape, the GC setbacks would likely make it unbuildable. It would need to be combined with the other lots before we believe it could be utilized. If this property is rezoned to commercial, it would require a type 3 buffer against the existing single-family homes. That's basically a 15 to 30-foot wide buffer that would require new plantings to include trees, evergreens, and shrubs. Black Gum Road is a 50-foot wide county-maintained right-of-way that is currently slag or gravel. According to Public Works, there are no known plans to pave this road in the near future, and they did have some concerns about future commercial uses and the maintenance that would be required on a gravel road. I did want to point out the land use element does give us strategies for and requirements for commercial properties. Having adequate rights of way to access commercial properties is listed in the land use element in terms of establishing commercial property. Like I said, the potential concerns for spot zoning for the MR10 properties were a concern of staff. We did mention to the applicant the possibility of approaching those owners to maybe have them come in as a combined rezoning request to commercial. We also discussed the idea of a neighborhood commercial zone that would be more of a transitional zone, or again, the future land use map designation for this tract is a high-density residential. So the current zoning doesn't match that existing future land use map designation. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this item on February 17th. Their motion was to recommend denial for the rezoning request. At that time, they heard from the applicant and 5 neighboring property owners who spoke against the request. Some of the concerns discussed were issues with noise, traffic, and the lack of suitability for commercial development and other potential negative uses. The Planning Commission also unanimously voted to recommend denial for a change to the future land use map from high-density residential to commercial. Any questions?
I've got some. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's all over you. I have a few, Ms. Richardson. On the map that you furnished us, all the property outlined in red, I take it is encompass of the 6.9 acres?
Yes, sir.
Because it's not continuous, just kind of all over the place. The areas that are kind of like in the donut, there's residential homes in that area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I take it that those residents are against the general commercial rezoning?
I think we did receive a call from one that might have been interested in going in with the rezoning. I don't think there was ever follow through on that.
How many residents are in that so-called donut hole there?
Looks like there are 4 properties. I think there are 3 homes.
4 properties, 3 homes. Now here's the problem we're faced. It's zoned high density.
Its future land use map designation is high density.
High density
It's zoned for medium.
Okay. So the property owners, I take it, or this is their investment, whatever's their business, it's their land. They're interested in getting the biggest bang for their buck. And if we don't rezone it commercial, general commercial, then it stays as high density, which any numerous developers would be glad to grab a piece of land over there with high density as the zoning. So now are those residents, do you know if they're familiar with the current zoning? What could happen to that property if it's not rezoned general commercial?
I do not know how familiar they are with that. I will say that for the property to be developed as high density, it would still need a rezoning. It would still go through the same process, but the request for high density would comply with the future land use map.
So it currently isn't zoned high density?
That's correct. It's zoned for medium density MR10.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. McCardle?
You said earlier that it would be considered spot zoning or it wouldn't be?
Well, I certainly don't want to make that legal determination. I do think the request to GC, there is adjacent commercial property, adjacent commercial zoning to this track. It does look a little concerning on the map that we would now have remaining those lots in the middle that would be MR10 kind of standing on their own.
Okay. And like Mr. Newton said, the future land use map is high density, but it's zoned MR10.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And earlier and in previous conversations, there's a desperate need for workforce housing in this particular area of the neck.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
If there aren't any other questions, we are now open for a motion. To the next item.
Hearing none.
Hearing
Does not carry.
no motion or second. Ordinance number 23-09.
On 7 and 8, I know they go together, but we have a vote on it. I think that was the vote.
There was no action
So you
on,
need to do 11B and 11C, I think.
I thought we did.
You just did 11B.
I know what they're talking about. Madam Vice Chair. I think,
thank
as a
you.
point of clarification, I think Ms. Richardson, ordinance number 23, well, items 11B and 11C on the agenda, those two go together, correctly? Correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, so if you do not have a motion on 11B, there would be no necessity or reason for a motion on 11C, is that correct?
Well,
Because they run together.
11B,
Yeah.
didn't we?
We did.
right, you would, to
Okay.
approve it, you would need an ocean.
did.
Right, that was the question, and I heard you say moving to 11D, and I saw some discussion. So just to put on the record, there was no call for a motion on 11C because item 11B failed for lack of a motion. All right?
No,
Thank you.
11B, the vote was 4-2, wasn't it?
No, that was 11A.
That was A.
Oh, okay.
So, correct. So 11D. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we are now with 11D. 11D.
Item 11D is an ordinance to amend the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. This item has been a long time coming, so we are excited to bring this before you tonight. The Waccamaw Regional Council of Governments prepared the attached draft that's in your packet of the element in order to comply with the state mandated guidelines. This section of our comp plan was last updated back in 2009. Planning Commission held 2 workshops on this item in March of '22 and in December of '22, and the Waccamaw staff made amendments to the document based on comments that were received both during and after the workshops. We also sent the document out to relevant stakeholders, including some public safety, pedestrian groups, Merle's Inlet 2020, environmental groups, DOT, Public Works, the airport, and other POA groups. We did receive some comments, and those have been reflected in the draft as well. This document addresses our existing road network. It does reference both of the recently completed corridor studies that were done on the Waccamaw Neck, discusses accident data, bike ped facilities, and it also addresses other modes of transportation like our railroads and airports, and of course, transit providers. The document also has a list of transportation needs that were identified with this effort, and other previous initiatives like our GSATS plan are also reflected in this. And there's also a goals and strategies section there with some associated timeframes. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this back in February and voted unanimously to recommend approval for the document. And I would like to introduce Lee Kane to you. Lee is with Waccamaw Regional, and she's going to briefly go over the document for you. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Lee Kane, and I am the Local Planning Services Director with the Waccamaw Regional Council of Governments. Prior to coming to Waccamaw Regional Council, I worked for Horry County for about a decade, and I did help produce their comprehensive plan. So, I learned a lot through that process, and I wanted to make sure that as we were drafting this and putting this together, that it became a resource and tool that you can use as council members, especially with the list of projects that are identified in there. That is a good crosswalk of all of the existing plans and studies in the region, but additional projects have also been identified as a potential need. So when the GSAT's transportation plan or your rural transportation plan that are managed by our office, but the input is provided by your organization, you can be able to refer to this list to say, this is our priority project, and you can let us know what your priorities are as a community. In addition, the goals and strategies, they cover everything from making sure that new development accounts for the transportation impacts in your community, also looking at bicycle and pedestrian facilities and safety associated with that, and multimodalism, and making sure that you have multiple modes of transportation that serve your community, including transit. And we also talked about the need for complete streets, especially in areas like Murrells Inlet, where you have this very walkable or potentially walkable community, and measures and tools that you could use to be able to get to your end destination as to what your goals are. So the goals and strategies throughout this should be things that you could easily refer to, that the county can then prioritize as to what ordinances you may need to revise, what types of funding sources that are available, and just being able to help guide you for the next 5 to 10 years. I'm here for your questions. We did get a lot of good feedback from Planning Commission and also from community groups, and every single one of those questions and concerns were addressed within this draft.
I've got a comment.
Anderson.
So I'll say during the public comment period, we didn't hear anything about this element. So I assume that we've crossed all our T's and dotted all our I's.
Yes,
and
sir.
that's a good thing. Thank you.
It says that this is an amendment to the transportation element. Did we amend, or did we have to go in and almost totally rewrite what we had?
Well, I went through and we definitely did a lot of revisions, but not taking away the heart of the plan. There were some very important missing components from the previous version of the document, especially the regional aspect of transportation planning. We all know where our funding sources come from to fund some of these larger projects, and I needed this document to be able to focus on that because the public needs to be aware that the major funding sources are, and it's not necessarily from the county itself. But the setting of the priorities do come from the county. And so those are things that we looked at also in addressing complete streets and helping to define what that means and how it's important to your communities. And I will note one last thing. There's a big component in here regarding accidents, fatalities, traffic accidents, just things to be able to help you understand what kind of trends are happening in your community.
Thank you.
Quick question. Is complete street and green street, are those synonymous?
They can be, but not necessarily. So a complete street includes your typical roadway, bicycle and pedestrian facilities. It can incorporate things like transit, typically things like street trees, and just making a fully encompassing environment that somebody really wants to be in and all different types of users will use. You can incorporate green principles into a complete street, and that would be things like bulb outs that you would have for, say, on-street parking, that those areas could infiltrate stormwater through them, and that's just all comes down to the design of the project.
Okay, thank you.
With no further comments, may we receive a motion on ordinance number 23-09?
So moved.
Mr. Anderson, is there a second?
Second.
Second, good.
Mr. Newton? Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Opposes? Motion carries. Mr. Watson?
Thank you. This is a revision and amendment to an ordinance. This ordinance has to do with the revenue from Sunday sales of alcoholic beverages. The original ordinance goes back to 2008, but it has a 5-year sunset provision. So it comes before the council every 5 years. It is up now for its 5-year reconsideration, and if the council so chooses to re-adopt it in its revised and amended version. Essentially, the amendment is to update it as to the date of passage. All the substantive terms are the same.
Are there any questions?
Counselor,
Newton?
were there any changes?
Just regarding the date, because each ordinance has its 5-year sunset provision in it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Did I hear that right there when the question, was there any changes? Were there changes?
You have to change within the paragraph which says this ordinance will be effective up to.
They were just boilerplate changes?
Yes, sir. But
Okay.
that, I mean, it's important
That's all
because
I
it does,
needed to
every
know.
5 years has to be updated.
Okay, that's fine. That clarified that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Call for a motion on ordinance number 23-10.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Mr. Elliott. Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Oppose? Motion carries. First reading of ordinances. Ordinance number 23-11, an ordinance to amend Appendix C, Stormwater Management and Flood Damage Prevention, Part 2, Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance of Georgetown County, South Carolina, Code of Ordinances. Ordinance number 23-12, an ordinance adopting the newly revised flood insurance study and flood insurance rate map for Georgetown County, South Carolina. Next item, approval of our minutes. Is there a recommendation for the adoption?
So moved.
Mr. Carolina, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Elliott? Call for the vote. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposes? Motion carries. Legal briefing executive session, there are 2 items. Briefing regarding an economic development matter pursuant to South Carolina Code 30-4-70, parentheses A, parentheses 5, and personal matter. Is there a motion for us to move into executive personnel matter? Is there a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Mr. Anderson, second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Elliott, those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, motion carries. This is a call for motion to move into open session.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
we have a motion from Mr. Newton and a second from Mr. Carolina to return to open session. Those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Opposes? Motion carries. At this time, is there any further business to come before council?
Madam Vice Chair, I have a motion.
Mr. Newton?
I move to approve the proposed plan for expansion of the Georgetown County Business Center in the collaborative with Santee Electric Cooperative and its affiliates for development of the new parcel, and to authorize up to $400,000 for the project, and authorize the county administrator, economic development director, and county attorney to take all such action as necessary to close the transaction and pursue the project.
Is there a second to Mr. Newton?
So moved.
We have a second from Mr. Anderson. Call for the vote. Those in favor of the motion as stated by Mr. Newton, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion carries. Is there anything else to come before council? And we move for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion from Ms. McCarter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from both who, Mr. Carolina and Mr. Elliott. Those in favor of moving for adjournment, please raise your hand. Opposes? Motion carries.